Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. In this podcast, your host, Lori Amin, will interview published authors to chat about their work, journey to getting published, and their book recommendations. If you share a passion for books and always looking for your next read, then join us. Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. Today's guest is New York Times bestseller author Jennifer Ashley. Jennifer writes historical, paranormal, and contemporary romance, as well as historical mysteries. In this interview, we chat about what it's like to write a historical mystery, her latest Murder in the East End, and of course, around her book recommendations. Now let's go to an interview. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast.
Hi, yes, thank you for having me.
So happy to have you here. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Jennifer Ashley. I write a lot. I write historical romance, paranormal romance, historical mysteries. I started writing contemporary romance, and I also dabble in a little urban fantasy.
That's amazing. I read some of her historical romance and some of your historical mysteries, and I love it. So I'm excited to chat with you. So what inspired you to become a writer?
What inspired me to become a writer? When I was very young, I was very imaginative and, made up a lot of stories to play with my dolls or whatever. And I realized I love to read also. And I realized one day that the stuff I read in books was just stuff people made up and wrote down. And I was like, well, I make stuff up all the time. Why don't I just write it down and I could be a writer? And then I thought, that would be really cool if like one of these books in the library had one of my stories inside it. So I just started writing, and I knew I wasn't going to be published very soon because I was like 8 years old. But I really enjoyed it, and I just kind of wrote to entertain myself. And I've just written all my life.
I love it. And so what was that journey to get that first book published?
Well, finally, it was many years later. But I still always wanted to write for publication, and I would write short stories and send them to magazines, and occasionally I'd get one published. But I said, one day I said, if I really want to get published, I have to focus on it. If it's my dream, I really have to make this dream come true, and just dabbling isn't going to do it. So I gave myself like a year. I realize now that was not very much time, but at the time I said, okay, I'm just going to write books, I'm going to submit books, and I'm just going to keep doing it and put my manuscripts into contests and just really, really try and focus and give it all my attention. And actually it worked. Within a year, I had an agent, and I submitted a book to a publisher who's now gone out of business, Dorchester. And the editor I submitted to it there is actually still my editor, but she's at Berkeley now with me. And so I've had this editor since, for a long time now. But I sent it into her, and actually I sent it into a contest that they were having to, get new writers. And I didn't final in the contest at all. But my editor, Kate Seaver, she liked the book. And so she offered a contract, and I was just floored, but, very, very happy. And since then, I've just been writing books and having them published, and now I do some self-publishing, and the rest is history.
I love it. So what is the process like? Since you write different genres, you write PNR, you write some historical romance, historical mysteries, what is the process of trying to sell different books when it's a new genre that the publisher may not know you for?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, the thing is a lot of my books, even though I cross genres, I still kind of retain some of the same characteristics. Like I like really strong male protagonists, and I work really hard on that male voice. And I also like very strong heroines. I don't like heroines who cry and wait to be rescued. They have to get out there and do the rescuing too. And I think that carries over into any subgenre I do, whether it's mystery or romance or whatever. And also editors and publishers, a lot of them do publish through different genres and different authors and different genres. And so the best thing to do if there are romance authors out there saying, well, I really want to write mystery, the best thing to do is have a conversation with your editor and just see how amenable she is. I've always kind of written historical mysteries, because I have another mystery series called the Captain Lacey Regency Mysteries that I wrote right under Ashley Gardner, a different name. So I had a lot of experience already writing that, and I wrote those even before I started writing romances. So it was kind of difficult to say, I want to start this mystery series, but fortunately, my editor, I wrote a novella in the series just to try it out, and she read it and she really liked it. So that was the way how Cat Holloway mysteries came about.
Oh, that's fascinating. So let's talk about your writing. Do you follow an outline, or do you see where the story leads you?
Well, usually I kind of have an idea of where I want the story to go. I have the characters. I often have the opening scene. I see them in this situation. And then after that, I do brainstorm a little bit about, where I want things to happen. But I'm more or less a pantser, where I just let the story go, and I let the characters kind of tell me what they're going to do. And I've done this so long, I've tried very hard to do outlines and things. And a lot of authors are really good with outlines, and they can't imagine writing without it. But for me, it's a little bit too restricting. And if the characters in the story say we're going this way, I should listen to them. And I've found that there are two kinds of people. There's planners and there's problem solvers. And problem solvers solve problems as they go, whereas planners have to have everything planned out before they even start. And I'm a problem solver. So as I go through life, things come up in my face. I don't have to have an overall grand plan for anything. So I've kind of embraced that and said, okay, this is my style, and not fight it anymore.
I love it. So how do you organize yourself as a writer? How do you keep track of your ideas, inspirations, characters, and other series tidbits? Because you do write series, so I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I write a lot of series, and you have to really keep track. I have notebooks where I do some of my brainstorming, or I write out like a character biography, or sometimes I'll tell myself the story of the character in their own words. I'll kind of do an autobiography and say, I am this character, and I grew up like this, and this is what happened to me. So I have that in notebooks, and also I use a program called Scrivener that some authors absolutely love and other authors absolutely hate. There's like no middle ground with Scrivener. You love it or you hate it. Well, I really like it because there are places where I can put in my character lists and character histories. I've got maps and research materials, and so it's kind of all in one place, and I'm good with having it on computer where I can, back up the file and save it. I love my notebooks, but I also know that sometimes I can lose a notebook, and if you lose something written down, there's no backup. There's no Dropbox for notebooks.
Yeah, that is true. Oh my gosh. So do you share your walk along the way, or do you wait to complete a father's story?
No one sees my work until it's been through at least 2 drafts, my rough drafts, because I am a pantser and I just write where the story leads me. Sometimes I have to really clean it up because the story might lead off in a totally different direction. That might be the right way to go, but then I have to go back and change the beginning to match. And, it would be very confusing for most people. And I'm also a very shy person. So I don't want anyone to see something that I've done that's just not at its best. I'd like to go through at least write the book and then do run revision, and then I'll let people see it.
I love it. So you write historical romance and historical mysteries, so historical fiction. What kind of research do you conduct to get the different parts right?
I do a lot of research. Research is historical research is kind of an ongoing process. It's not that I sit down and do, a month of research and then I'm researching all the time. And I read a lot of books on periods in the past. So when I find a new book, it's really exciting, and I sit down and I devour it. So I lots and lots of reading. And then I also have a subscription to a newspaper archive where they have newspapers from England, going back all the way, I think, to the 18th century, possibly before that. And that's really interesting to pull up, say, I want to see what people were talking about on July 20th in 1882. And I could pull up this issue and just read through it. And it really helps you get to what people were interested in during that time, and what people were doing in the arts and theater, and what was popular, and what the scandals of the day were, and stuff that, doesn't necessarily get in the history books because it's kind of obscure. But it's really a good way to get into the day-to-day, what people were thinking and doing. So I do a lot of that, and I love looking at old maps. I get a lot of inspiration for books actually by looking at a map, say, of London, and saying, oh, what is that street and what is that building? And then doing research on it and going, oh, that's really interesting. And then I try to incorporate that into a story. So I do many things, and I research just all the time.
I love it. What was the source of inspiration for Below the Stairs Mystery?
For the Pat Holloway Below Stairs Mysteries, I actually don't remember. A long time ago, because I came up with this book a long time ago, this idea. I was writing, as I said, I have a Captain Lacey Regency Mysteries. And at the time I was going, this was like, I think, this must have been like 2002.
Oh, wow.
I was going, I'd like to write another historical mystery, but I'd like it to be like the Captain Lacey Mysteries are Captain Lacey as a man, and he tells the story. It's his point of view. And I said, I'd like to do something in a woman's point of view. But I said, but I don't know if I want to do a society lady. I want to do something really different. And I was reading about, the domestic servants and what they did and stuff. And I said, well, what if she's like a housekeeper or a cook? And I like to cook. So I thought, well, let's see what about a cook. And so I had this idea for her and her first story for many years. And then for some reason, and I can't remember what reason it is, I sat down and I said, I'm just going to write the first story and see if I can do it, see if I can get this character. So I wrote the novella that I mentioned before. It's called The Soup Shawn of Poison, and I actually self-published that, and it's out there to be read. And then my editor read that novella and really liked it. So I was just inspired by, I wanted a strong woman character who was not necessarily, who was a little bit different, who wasn't, in the cream of society. And so she can know what's going on in people's lives, but from the other side, and I thought that was just a really fascinating idea. So I'm very glad I pursued it.
Yeah, Kat is a strong character. Like, she's a cook, she's a mother. She helps Daniel solve mysteries, and if she's reluctant, she has the ability to walk through society just unannounced. And so I think that helps her kind of like help solve the mystery, like in a way that doesn't feel so intimidating. So I think that's awesome. So what is it like to write a Victorian mystery?
It's really interesting because I like the Victorian age because it really isn't so different to our age right now. It really wasn't that long ago. 140 years now. The Victorian age ended actually in about like 1901. And so that really wasn't that long ago. And they had photography, and they had trains, and, the only thing they didn't have that we have is like airplanes and computers. And I mean, they were just starting to get telephones. They were, starting to get motor cars. So a lot of the stuff that we kind of take for granted right now, they were just starting. It was kind of exciting for them and new. And they were trying to see, if this is just a fad or something that's really going to take off. And so that's very interesting. And it's also intriguing just to see how differently they viewed the world, which in some ways is not different at all. In some ways it's very different. Like I was just reading how female astronomers in the 1880s, men did not want them to actually view things through telescopes because they said that it was too hard for women to go outside at night and look through a telescope. It was too exhausting, and they couldn't possibly ask a woman to do that. That would be wrong. So a lot of the female astronomers weren't allowed to actually look at the telescopes, which to us is like, why not?
Yeah.
But they're like, we're protecting the women by not allowing them, outside at night to look through the telescope, because they'll get too cold and it's too hard, and, we want to keep them safe. And so I'm like, okay. So it's, it's a different world, but at the same time, a lot of things we do now is because of their discoveries.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I think return age is an interesting time where there's a lot of discoveries, a lot of new things, but also women's rights were on the surge. The suffrage movement was happening. Some of the women's rights were pushing away, like the Marriage Act and all those different things. So it's an interesting time that you can bring in. And if you bring strong female characters to the table, it just creates it creates a vision that's reflective to today's society. So, Murder in the East End is about a mysterious death of a nurse and the disappearance of children at a family hospital. In it, we meet Daniel's brother and more about his backstory. What was it important to showcase more about Daniel's story in this book?
Well, I talked a little bit more about Daniel in this book because, one, I really like Daniel, and I love writing about him, so any excuse. And also a lot of readers were saying, they wanted to learn more and more about him because he's an interesting character. And, cats love interest. So I wanted to just show, and I know what Daniel's story is, but I kind of am revealing it a little bit slowly. Because it's just, because that's how Cat would learn it, is a little bit slowly. There's things he can't tell her. And I had a lot of fun bringing in Daniel's brother. He's not actually his brother, it's like his foster brother, Mr. Fielding, who is a vicar now, and how they grew up together. And, Mr. Fielding was anything the total opposite of a man you think a vicar would be. So I've had a lot of fun writing Mr. Fielding, who will also appear in future books. But I really enjoy delving into Daniel's background, and I learn things about him as I go too.
I love it. And so the romance is light into the story, but should we expect more progress in the future stories?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
It's a little light just because, this is a mystery series and not a romance series. So if this was a romance series, it would be, a lot more romance in it. Yeah. But I know some mystery readers don't really like that there's romance in it. So I kind of keep it light for them. But at the same time, I know a lot of romance readers read this. So, I want to keep that going a little bit. So yes, of course, there's going to be a lot more in the future. And this is probably a spoiler, but I'm not the kind of person who's just going to kill off the love interest, to make things exciting. So Daniel's safe. Don't worry.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
So what are some of your upcoming projects?
Oh, upcoming. I'm doing so many things. Right now, at the moment, I am writing Cat Holloway book 5. So the Below Stair Mysteries book 5, Murder in the East End is book 4. So book 5 will come out probably next year. I've also, right now, I started writing just for fun. I wrote a series for they're 4 short books. It's called The McLaughlin Brothers, and that's a contemporary romance. And I just did it for fun, to do something lighthearted, fun, funny, feel-good romances, and I self-published that. The first 2 came out in June, and then 1 came out last week, book 3, and then the 4th one will come out after the Cat Holloway book will come out. I'm also working on more in my Shifters series, more in my Mackenzie's Scottish Historical series, romance. And also I have my Captain Lacey mysteries. Those are still going. I'm working on book 15, which will be out this fall. And I also just started another mystery series because I can't have enough. It's set in ancient Rome, and it's about a gladiator who is freed, and now he solves mysteries because, that's what you do when you're freed gladiator. and all of my mystery series have a little bit of romance in them. And in the Gladiator one, there's a female slave that comes to help him, and she becomes kind of his assistant in solving crimes. She's really, really smart. She's a scribe. And so I'm having a lot of fun going back to ancient Rome and writing this series. So that one will continue as well. And I'm probably doing other things, but I'm doing so many that I probably can't remember them all right now.
I can imagine. That's a lot. So I got a question. How do you write? Like, do you write every day? How do you keep yourself organized with all these projects?
Yes, I do write every day. Occasionally I do take a day off, and it's usually a Tuesday because I've been working out and running and things like that. On Tuesdays, I have a pretty heavy, intense workout, and I'm usually so tired I can't do anything else. Okay. So Tuesday is like my day off.
Okay.
My day off writing. But
Okay.
Other than that, I write every day. And I usually try to work on like one project at a time. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes it kind of, just because of deadlines, kind of gets confused in the middle. But I try to work on one thing at a time. And I like writing different series and different genres because it keeps me really fresh.
Mm-hmm.
If I wrote the same series, all the time, or just one kind of series books, I think they wouldn't be very good because I would get stale, I would get bored, and I think that would reflect in the writing. So, going from ancient Rome to Victorian England to Regency England to Victorian Scotland to the present day United States with paranormal, I mean, that keeps my brain kind of active and imaginative. So I really enjoy doing it that way.
I love it. So let's now go to our round of book recommendations. It's an opportunity to show our audience what they should read next. What is your favorite genre?
My favorite genre, I have to say, is mystery.
Ooh.
I love mysteries. I've been reading mysteries since I was very young. Fantasy is another genre I like. I've also been reading that a lot. I actually didn't come to romance until I was like in my 30s. I didn't read a lot of romance until then. And I'm sorry I didn't, because I realized there was a lot of really great books in it. But yeah, mystery is probably my number one favorite genre, and historical mystery especially.
I love it. Who's your favorite author or authors?
Well, that's a very good question. I have so many. Right now I'm reading some new to me authors. There's an author named, I make sure I get her name right, Ovidia Yu. It's, anyway, she writes historical mysteries set in Singapore in like the 1930s. They're just really good books. And let me see. It's Ovidia, and her last name is Yu, and she is from Singapore. And it's just really fascinating to read about, colonial Britain in that time from the point of view of, the natives of that area, not the British. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's really interesting. So she's got two series. One is historical and one is contemporary. And then I just finished reading a really fun book set in India. It's a mystery. And it's called what is it called? The Unexpected Inheritance of Inspector Chopra. And what he inherits is a baby elephant. And he has to take care of this baby elephant. And he's just a retired policeman. He's just retired. And he gets involved in solving this, chasing these organized crime guys in Mumbai. And it's really fascinating. I just love that book. And the elephant is adorable, of course. So the inspector's wife and the elephant are sitting in their living room. The elephant is in the living room, and they're like, watching soap operas together. So it's just so cute.
Okay. Tell us where we can find you online.
You can find me online all over the place. My website is jenniferashley.com, so it's very simple. I'm on Facebook, and if you go to jenniferashley.com, I've got links to my Facebook page. I'm on BookBub. I'm on Instagram. I do Pinterest. On Twitter. So I think I do all those. But yeah, if you go to jenniferashley.com, you can see all little icons where you can follow me, and you can also sign up for my newsletter there. I send out a newsletter when I have new books or books on pre-order, and special announcements, things like that.
I love it. Thank you, Jennifer, for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed this podcast, feel free to share with friends, subscribe, or rate and review the show. This is the easiest way to support this podcast. Want to join a romance loving community? Want weekly book recommendations, monthly author Q&As, and book recommendation meetups? Make new friends? Then join our Patreon community. To sign up, please follow the links in the show notes. What to Read Next podcast is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts to love on frolic.media/podcast. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.